Focus. I need focus. What got me here? Okay. I know it was the blood was shed to save me. I know it was your love that came and changed me. I know it was the blood. I know it was your love. I know it was the blood was shed to save me. You didn't leave me like I was. You came to save me. I was in need of your love. You poured it out free. You didn't leave me like I was. In need of your love. You didn't leave me like I was. You came and saved me.
Shalom Israel Mishpah family. This is not going to be too long of a teaching. This is really to help us, help Israel, help my family get their mind focused on the Passover and what we need to do to help us get our mind focused on the Passover. Make sure we choosing the correct lamb without blemish. At this point, we should really know the lamb that's without blemish. But so many of us are in camps or stuck in Christianity in some form. We're not picking the lamb without blemish. We're doing the same thing year after year after year. So let's go on this walk and let's get prepared for this high feast day that's coming up. And this is definitely something we're going to go over in the teaching. So let's get right to the word. There's nothing better. We're going to go to Exodus chapter 12. We're going to start at verse 1, and then we're going to read on down. So Exodus chapter 12, verse 1. And Yah spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, In the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for an house. And if the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of the souls. Every man according to his eating shall make your count for the lamb. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. He shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats. And ye shall keep it until the 14th day of the same month, and the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. So right here we see in Exodus 12, we're reading about them selecting the lamb, and that lamb without blemish. We should know that Yahshua, is that lamb without blemish. He is the only salvation for us. So as we get our mind right about spending time with our Abba, we should definitely know what lamb we're picking. Because some people, with their doctors and their teaching, they're telling you you're picking a lamb that is blemish. So when we skip down Exodus chapter 12, we're going to skip down to verse 13. And we're going to read down to verse 16. All right. Here we go. Exodus chapter 12, verse 13. And it reads, And the blood shall be to you for a token upon the house where ye are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you. And the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you, when I smite the land of Egypt. And this day shall be unto you for a memorial, and ye shall keep it as a feast to Yah throughout your generations. You shall keep it a feast by ordinance forever. 7 days shall you eat unleavened bread. Even the first day you shall put away leaven out of your houses. For whosoever eateth leavened bread from the first day until the 7th day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. And in the first day there shall be a set apart convocation. And the 7th day there shall be a set apart convocation to you. No manner of work shall be done. in them save that which every man must eat, that only may be done of you. So we're supposed to observe the Feast of Unleavened Bread. This is an ordinance that we keep forever. And the reason why we keep this, because verse 17 tells us, and you shall observe the Feast of Unleavened Bread, for in the selfsame day have I brought your armies out of the land of Egypt. Therefore you shall observe this day in your generations by ordinance forever. And here we see he calls this the first month of the year for us. So we're going to look at a couple of things in his teaching. First, what is the first month? What do we call the first month? Also, we're going to look at keeping the feast where we at. Chicago, New York, Australia, China, Zimbabwe, Morocco, Israel, Brazil. We're going to actually understand what it means to keep the feast where we're at. Also, we're going to look at what is a high Sabbath day. And this is something that some of us hear, but we ain't willing to, not willing, but we don't understand how to teach the high Sabbath day. So we're going to get scriptures so we can learn exactly what the high Sabbath days are too. So the first thing we're going to look at is the month. Where do we get the name of the month from? So we're going to look at some scriptures for the month for, as we say, Aviv. And we're also going to look at the word Nisan for that month too. And we're going to see the difference between both. So we're in the land of our captivity, and we call that month something different. The majority time for me is during my count of my 364 days, 52 weeks out of the year, it ends up on March. Some people have it where it gets very close to April, and sometimes it may hit April. But the majority time it hits March for me. So with that being said, let's see the difference between Aviv and Nisan. And we're going to have to look at turning our minds right to keeping the Most High's calendar time, not the Gregorian calendar time or not Hasatan's calendar time. So Exodus 13, starting at verse 1. And it reads, And Yah spake unto Moses, saying, Sanctify unto me all the firstborn, whatsoever opened the womb among the children of Israel, both man and of beast, it is mine. And Moses said unto the people, Remember this day, in which ye came out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage, for by strength of the hand of Yah brought you out from this place. There shall no leavened bread be eaten. This day came ye out of the month of the Aviv. A-V-I-V. So here they call the first month in Exodus chapter 13 Aviv. So you could put down in your smartphone, your calendar, whatever you want to be, the beginning of our first month of our calendar is Aviv. You could call it 1 and just count. But this is the name that we use. We'll also point out using the name in your own captivity. And again, we'll get that through the scriptures. All right, let's go to the next one. We're going to stay in the book of Exodus. We're going to look at Exodus chapter 23, 14 through 17. Exodus chapter 23, 14 through 17. And it reads, 3 times thou shalt keep a feast unto me in the year. Thou shalt keep the feast of unleavened bread. Thou shalt eat unleavened bread 7 days, as I commanded thee, in the time appointed of the month of Aviv. For in them thou camest out of Egypt, and none shall appear before me empty. And the feast of harvest, the first fruits of thy labors, which thou hast sown in the field, and the feast of ingathering, which is in the end of the year, when thou hast gathered in thy labors out of the field. 3 times in the year all thy males shall appear before Yah Elohim. So we look at this, we see the month of Aviv right here in verse 15. A-V-I-V. So again, you call that first month Aviv. As you're getting your mind set on the Passover, keeping the the appointed times for the Father in your heart and your mind. Now we also see 3 times in a year that the males must keep certain feasts. It's the feast that's coming up, which we call Days of Unleavened Bread and the Passover. The Feast of Weeks, which some people call Pentecost, First Fruits, and we also see the Feast of Ingathering, or the Feast of Tabernacles, what it's called as well. So this is considered a high feast. What makes it a high feast? A high feast makes it more important or more recognized, and it's not by Israel, but by the Most High. So that's what makes it a little higher than the rest. The Most High puts a different importance on it. He says you have to come. And we'll also see that written down in the Feast of Ingathering or the Feast of Tabernacle. When the Most High comes back, there's a punishment for the other nations if they don't come up and keep that feast day. That makes it a high feast day, a high importance. We're going to see this when we talk about our Messiah, and they said they had to get him off that tree, or what people also say the cross, because the next day was a high feast day. That was not the weekly Sabbath. So you can point to Exodus 23:14 as well as the next scripture we're coming up to for that. So again, we're getting to this part of the teaching as well. So when someone comes out with that teaching, well, it was Saturday because it was the Sabbath. No, it was a high Sabbath, and you can point to this one as well as the one we're going to right now. Deuteronomy chapter 16. We're starting at verse 1. We're going to start at verse 1 and 2, and then we're going to skip down to verse 16. I'm going to read verses 1 and 2 in Deuteronomy 16, and then we're going to skip down, okay? So here it goes. Observe the month of Aviv, and keep the Passover unto Yah the Elohim. For in that month of the Aviv, Yah the Elohim brought thee forth out of Egypt by night. Verse 2, Thou shalt therefore sacrifice the Passover unto Yah the Elohim of the flock and the herd in the place which Yah shall choose to place his name there. So, again, another part of the teaching we're going to go to is, can we keep the feast days where we scattered at? Can we keep days of unleavened bread and the Passover here in America? Can we keep it in Brazil? Can we keep it in China? Can we keep it in Russia? Can we keep it in Morocco? Can we keep it in Southern Africa, South Africa? Can we keep it in Australia? So on and so forth. Can we keep it? Because it plainly says in verse 2, Thou shalt therefore sacrifice the Passover unto Yah the Elohim of the flock and the herd in the place which Yah shall choose to place his name there. So we're going to see where Yah chooses to place his name and how Yah actually chooses. So that's a teaching, again, at this point we're looking at as we're getting our minds ready for this Passover. The reason why we do it, what month we're doing it, and again, is this what Yah has chosen for us to do, where we're scattered at. Let's skip down to verse 16. Let's pick it up at actually verse 15, okay? We're in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 16, and we're going to read verses 15 and 16. All praises to the Most High. And it reads, 7 days shalt thou keep a solemn feast unto Yah the Elohim, in the place where Yah shall choose. Because Yah the Elohim shall bless thee in all thy increase, and in all thy works, and in thy hands. Therefore thou shalt surely rejoice. 3 times in a year shall all thy males appear before Yah the Elohim, in the place which he shall choose, in the feast of unleavened bread, and the feast of weeks, and the feast of tabernacles, and they shall not appear before Yah empty. So the feast of tabernacles is still the same feast of ingatherings. The feast of weeks is still the feast of first fruits, and the feast of unleavened bread. So again, we got the same language here as we see in Exodus 23, And again, this shows us that these are the high feast days. And these are important because we will see in John chapter 19. All right. So when we see in John chapter 19, we're going to do this part of the teaching that focuses on the high Sabbath. And what exactly was the high Sabbath they're talking about when our Messiah was crucified? And not crucified for nothing that he did wrong, but he was crucified first for the house of Israel and for us to become set apart and go teach the Passover and keep these commandments and be a light unto all these other nations, as well as to the house of Israel itself. So let's pick it up in John chapter 19, verse 28, and we're going to stop at 31. And again, you use Exodus 23 and Deuteronomy 16 to teach those folks that are confused in Christianity as well as some other Hebrews that when it talks about the high Sabbath day, we get the 3 days and 3 nights that he rose up on a Sabbath day from this teaching. He was cut off in the midst of the week in Daniel 9:27. So that's the same thing we understand as a prophecy, that it couldn't have been Good Friday. And then in Matthew 12:40, he also said that the Son of Man will be just like how Jonah was, 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Jonah spent 3 days and 3 nights in the belly. So when we read this, again, it puts our mind in the right place of when they say, well, they make sure it was a Sabbath day because it was high. The Romans, they should be teaching our word, and they twisted it up, the Roman Catholic Church. And this is us making the record straight, making it plain. So let's read this. Good word. John chapter 19, verse 28. And it reads, after this, Yahushua, knowing that all things were now accomplished, that the scripture might be fulfilled, saith, I thirst. Now there was set a vessel full of vinegar, and they filled a sponge with vinegar, and put it upon hyssop, and put it into his mouth. When Yahushua therefore had received the vinegar, he said, it is finished. And he bowed his head and gave up the spirit. The Jews, therefore, because it was the preparation that the body should not remain upon the stake on the Sabbath day. And in the next part, this is where we get it. It says, for that Sabbath day was an high day. Besought Pilate that their legs might be broken and that they might be taken away. So we see that they wanted not the Romans, but the Hebrews according to the flesh, Judah, the rest of the other Benjamin and Levite that could have been there at the present time. They want them off because they're commanded to do the high Sabbath day. Again, in Deuteronomy 16 and Exodus 23, it bears that fruit out. So when we look at that, now we're going to go back to where the Most High chooses to put his name. And we're going to go back to the book of Deuteronomy there. Because as they talk about the Old Testament and the New Testament, they bear record of each other. Our Messiah, he comes in a volume of the book. And again, we're getting ready for this Passover. And we're choosing that lamb without blemish. And that should be Yahushua. And a lot of them got that teaching that he came from carnal lust from Joseph and Mary. So you're picking a lamb that has blemish from the get-go. And it's unfortunate because all these different camps, one, they can't see that they're falling for a doctrine from false prophets. Not because I'm saying they're false prophets, it's because they've been proven to be a false prophet already. By their own words and their own videos. But they rather follow a false prophet and teach the lies of a false prophet than getting with this lamb without blemish. Because again, as we go through this little study that we're doing, we're going to see in Zechariah chapter, I think it's 9, where he is prophesied to come into Jerusalem on that donkey. No different than in Isaiah when it was prophesied that he had to come through a virgin. But you'll get so many Hebrews that are stuck in these camps that will tell you that, hey, he couldn't have been born that way. You'll get other Hebrews, and again, this is why we're doing this part right here, that will say that you don't have to keep any of the feast days where you're scattered at. So again, let's get our mind focused on this, and we'll prove by the word that you got to keep the Passover, days of unleavened bread, feast of weeks, the whole 9 yards, the whole kicking caboodle where the Most High had scattered you. And he might not have chosen you. And that might be the reason why you don't keep them. Because it says you keep these days where the Most High has chosen to put his name. His name is the word. He got to choose you. You can't choose him. So a lot of these people, when you're talking to them, you're getting upset and say, hey, I can't understand why you don't see this. That you can keep this feast day right here. That you should be keeping this feast day right here because it's commanded of you. You got to understand the Most High may not have chosen them. So let's pick it up at Deuteronomy chapter 7. We're going to read from 6 to 9. All praises to the Most High. Let's go with the read. And it reads, For thou art a set apart people unto Yah, thy Elohim. Yah, the Elohim, have chosen thee to be a special people unto himself, above all people that are upon the face of the earth. So when we stop right here, you got so many people to say, well, I'm a Hebrew Israelite. I'm Judah. I'm the part of the people that be scattered, and we're so different from everybody else. We're so different because we can sing better. We can run better. We can create better. We make better babies. The whole 9 yards, people are saying. And we say that because the Most High has chosen us. And I say hallelujah to that. I have no problem with that. But that's only part of the picture. Because then you got other Hebrews saying that, okay, now you don't have to keep the feast days. Again, if you're part of what the Most High has chosen, then why wouldn't you? Now let's pick it up at verse 7. Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 7. And it reads, Yah did not set his love upon you, nor choose you, because ye were more in number than any people. For ye were the fewest of all people. But because Yah loved you, and because he would keep the oath which he had sworn unto your fathers, have Yah brought you out with a mighty hand, and redeemed you out of the house of bondmen, from the hand of Pharaoh the king of Egypt. Now therefore, that Yah the Elohim, he is Elohim, the faithful El, which keepeth covenant and mercy with them that love him and keep his commandments to 1,000 generations. So verse 9, he says, your El is the one that keepeth the covenant. And he tells you to keep that covenant for 1,000 generations. We see it's only 42 generations in Matthew from the Messiah's birth going back to Adam. So a lot of generations to go for 1,000 generations. But a part of that is to keep the covenant with the Most High. You got to keep his commandments. And that's a part of him choosing you. And we'll bear this fruit out all the way to the New Testament. So let's look at Matthew. And we're going to look at the book of Matthew, chapter 22, verses 9 through 14. Matthew 22, verses 9 through 14. And it reads, Go ye therefore into the highways, and as many as ye shall find, bid them to the marriage. So those servants went out to the highways, and gathered together all as many as they found, both bad and good. And the wedding was furnished with guests. And when the king came in to see the guests, he saw there a man which had not on a wedding garment. He said unto him, Friend, how camest thou in hither, not having a wedding garment? And he was speechless. Then said the king to the servants, bid him hand and foot. Excuse me. Let's pick up verse 13 again. Then said the king to the servants, bind him hand and foot, and take him away, and cast him into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are called, but few are chosen. So again, we're in this walk, and we see so many that they said they're bid. They said that, okay, they're coming up to teach this word. Israel United in Christ, GOCC, all their flocking followers that come after them. Right? They say, we teaching this word. We want to go to the marriage feast. But they may not have, not to say may not, they haven't been chosen for the Most High. That's why their doctrine is so messed up. That's the reason why they can have a Passover, and put women up on the stage like they're going to the highest bidder. Or they can have so many doctrines that go against the word of the Most High. Or they're just pimping you all out for money, hand over foot. See, we got plenty of people that are Hebrew Israelites. Been called. Said, please come this way. They've been called to come to the marriage, but they have not been chosen. So as we look at this, we want the Most High to choose us, to put his name and his word in our mind and our heart, so we become a new creature, so that word can dwell in us richly, so we can be set apart, which is holy. But he must choose to do that. And we must keep his commandments, and that's part of him choosing us. But don't take my word for it. Let's continue. Let's go to John chapter 15. John 15, verse 14 through 21. And this is our Messiah talking. And again, we're getting ready for the Passover. We're getting ready to pick that lamb without blemish. And that's my Messiah. He's without blemish, without sin. Wasn't created in sin, without sin. And this part we're talking about is him saying that he chose us. This is the part he's saying, I will choose you. A personal thing. But again, you got too many people stuck in their camps or their mind is so messed up. Before they even read this, they don't believe parts of Isaiah. They twist that scripture as well as other scriptures to their own destruction because they're stuck under the kneecaps of false prophets and false teachers. So let's pick this up, John chapter 15, verses 14 through 19. And it reads, Ye are my friends, if ye do whatsoever I command you. Henceforth, I call you not servants, for the servant knoweth not what his master doeth, but I have called you friends. For all things I have heard of my Father, I have made known unto you. Ye have not chosen me, but I have chosen you, and ordained you, that ye should go and bring forth fruit, and that your fruit should remain, that whatsoever ye shall ask of your Father in my name, he may give it to you. So, in my life, I asked the Father to keep his feast days, and it became easy for me to keep them. The work I do let me keep the Father's will and his way. I gave him Bible scriptures. I gave him some word. And that's what it was. It's what it is. verse 16, it tells you that you're ordained to do this thing. That this is part of you bringing back fruit to the Father. This is part of Him giving you a talent and seeing if you bring back more talents to Him, or if your talent just goes by the wayside. See, you've been chosen to do this. This is not something that you do out of obligation. You're doing this out of the love of your Creator, the love of your Abba, the love of your friend. You're keeping His commandments because you love Him. You've been ordained to do this. So let's pick up at verse 17. Continue with the read. We're in the book of John, chapter 15. And it reads, "These things I command you, that you love one another. If the world hates you, you know that it hated me before it hated you." So we'll stop right here. Our Messiah, on the Passover, again, let's get our mind focused for the Passover. The Roman army, those Italians, as well as those Hebrews according to the flesh, those Pharisees and Sadducees, the same ones you see nowadays, the ones that tell you you better take the mark of the beast or you may not eat, the ones that are telling you that, hey, your Messiah was born out of carnal lust, even though there's too many scriptures that will tell you that's not the case. Even though Joseph and Mary both confess that they didn't sleep with each other, they still tell you they lying. The same ones that say that, hey, I don't have no problem locking up a Hebrew. The same ones that tell you that come into their Hebrew Academy class so they can charge you X amount of dollars. The same ones that tell you to flee so they can get paid. See, when he says they hated him and he kept that Passover and they were getting ready to serve him up for the slaughter, this is who we're focusing on. And if you're keeping that Passover in the right way, the same way I'm doing this teaching, some crazy Negro going to come on here and want to cause distinction. But so what? I mean, that's a small thing. Do your best, because at this very appointed time, as I'm getting ready for my Passover, I know you hated my Messiah with your black heart, as they did back then, you still do right now. So let's do verse 18 again. And it says, "If the world hates you, you know that it hated me before it hated you. If ye were of the world love his own. But because ye are not of the world, but I have chosen you out of the world, therefore the world hateth you." So again, what does that mean? He's telling you straight up that if you're keeping these commandments, you're different from the rest of the world. You've stopped doing what some Hebrews were doing in Exodus chapter 32, when they decided to make their own feast days and worshiping up to the God of heaven. We see that same thing in Acts chapter 7. We see it in Jeremiah chapter 10. I mean, it was Hebrew Israelites that were in the land of Israel that chopped down trees, dragged it to their house, erected with silver and gold, and then got the party started. Same thing they're doing in the land of their captivity right now. The heathens take it to the next level. But again, it was those Hebrew Israelites in the land that got that party started like that. So, if we understand that he chose us out of the world, then he's chosen us to keep his commandments because we love him. Now, let's go to verse 20. We're going to read two more verses, 20 and 21. And we're in John chapter 15. And it reads, "Remember the word that I said unto you, the servant is not greater than his master. If they have persecuted me, they will also persecute you. So if you're keeping the Passover, right? Think about it. You're keeping the Most High appointed time. One of his high feasts, days of unleavened bread. You all in. Mama can't stand you. Daddy don't want you by the house because you don't want to keep Easter. You ain't getting no hot bell bottoms. You ain't got no peacock hats. You ain't coming down to the church house to get to nibble on their swine. You ain't doing the Christmas. You ain't doing their festivals. You ain't coming listen to the Reverend, looking at the women in the tight dresses, giving out his oracles of abomination. You have chucked that to the side, and they can't stand for it. They want to know what's wrong with you. Or you just can't fellowship with those that's in those camps. You got that one Negro, Jermaine Grant, where they have a whole coronation on the Passover only to themselves, calling themselves the Holy Comforter, having banners coming out, all sorts of music going where they pat themselves on the back with 1,000 attaboys. See, they can't stand you because you want to humble yourself in the presence of the Most High, that you want to bow your head and give reverence to him on his Passover, because we understand the way he split one stream to get our forefathers out of the house of bondage, that Egypt, that he's going to do it, as Isaiah said, Isaiah in chapter 11 says, to multiple streams, to get his remnant out all places that we scattered. So all praises to the Most High. And we understand this is just a small part of the persecution that we must endure in this hour. So let's continue with the read. John chapter 15 verse 20. And it says, if they have kept my sayings, they will keep yours also. But all these things will they do unto you for my name's sake, because thou know not him that sent me. So if people can't stand you for keeping the Passover and days of unleavened bread, it could be your wife, it could be your husband, it could be your children, and they're not doing it to you. Don't get that part twisted, Israel. As we keep in the feast day, they're doing it to your Creator. They're doing it to Yeshua, Yahashua, and in English come Jesus. They're doing it to him because this Passover is not ours. This is his feast. As it tells you in Leviticus 23, tell all the house of Israel, these are my feasts. We see in other books, like Amos, where he tells about your feasts. And we don't want no part of your feast. That's what GOCC, that's the reason why they do all their Sabbath days or their feast days on a Saturday. Because that's their feast. It doesn't have nothing to do with the Messiah's feast. They have made up, like you see in Exodus 32, their own appointed times. You see others that make up their own appointed times, and they don't have the Messiah dwelling in their appointed times. It's bad that you don't have the correct time, but it's the worst part of not having the correct time is that the Messiah is not even mixed up in their feast day. They've made it up to men. Now, we see many places where he said, you keep the feast where he chooses to put his name. Now let's go ahead to Hebrews 8, 10 and 11. And let's see where the Most High chooses to put his name. And it also talked about his covenant. Here we go. Hebrews chapter 8, verse 10, and it reads, for this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith Yah. I will put my laws into their mind and write them in their hearts. And I will be to them Elohim, and they shall be to me a people. And they shall not teach every man his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, Know ye Yah, for all shall know me, from the least to the greatest. For I will be merciful to their unrighteousness, and their sins and their iniquities will I remember no more. Last verse, verse 13. In that he saith, a new covenant he made, the first old, now that which decayeth and waxes old is ready to vanish away. So here we see that wherever you're scattered at, no matter where you be, that the Most High words shall be put in your mind and your heart. That means he's chosen you to keep his commandments where he scattered you. That he's a sanctuary for you. Again, this is in Ezekiel chapter 11, no matter where he drives you to. And let's go ahead and read that. Let's go to Ezekiel 11. I didn't have that on here, so let's turn to it real quick. And we thank the Most High for his technology. Ezekiel 11. I think it's down to verse 16. Let's pick up at verse 14, 15, and 16. Let's read. Ezekiel chapter 11, verse 14 again. It reads, Again the word of Yah came unto me, saying, Son of man, thy brethren, even thy brethren, the men of thy kindred, and all the house of Israel, woe are they unto him, the inhabitants of Jerusalem, have said, Get ye far from Yah, unto us is the land given in possession. Therefore say, Thus saith the sovereign Yah, although I have cast them far off among the heathen. Are you among the heathen right now? Are you among the Donald Trumps of the world? Are you among the KKK? Are you among those Jewish ones? Again, let's read verse 16 again, Ezekiel 11:16, and let's put some clarity on this. Therefore thus saith the sovereign Yah, although I have cast them far off among the heathen, and although I have scattered them among the countries, yet will I be to them as a little sanctuary in the countries where they shall come. So, while you're in these other sanctuaries, this is where the Most High has chosen to put his name. This is where he has chosen you to teach his commandments. This is where he's chosen you to be a light unto the world. This is where he's chosen to write his laws in your mind and your heart. You're supposed to be teaching this Passover. And again, you need to be choosing the right land. So hopefully at this point, you should understand that you should be keeping the Passover, days of unleavened bread, where the Most High has scattered you at. You should understand the difference between the Sabbath days and the high Sabbath days. And you should be able to teach others the difference between the high Sabbath days, when the Most High was sacrificed for us, and the difference between the weekly Sabbath. So when they come to you saying Good Friday and Easter Sunday, how off they are. This is a teaching that you should know. And those that are stuck in those camps, we need to know how to choose the right land. Now we have the month of Aviv, and that's the name of the first month. But we're also going to look at Esther and Nehemiah. And we're going to see that they call the first month Nisan. And the reason why they call the first month Nisan, they were in the land of their captivity. And in the Babylonian way, the month of Nisan meant the start of flowers. Aviv is starting about the start of the harvest, the start of the crops. See, we call it spring here in the land of our captivity. But this is when the Most High started making life to spring forward. He's the one that started making life at this appointed time. So here we're going to see where they call the first month Nisan. So again, we're getting our mind pointed right to starting our year when the Most High says to start his year. And you could call it Viv, you could call it Nissan, you could call it number 1, you could call it March, but make sure your year is starting at the appointed time that the Most High says, and you're keeping his appointed time. With that being said, let's get and see where 2 different witnesses call their first month Nissan, and the reason why they call it Nissan. Alright, Esther chapter 3, we're reading 7 verses, and then with this, I think we're going to read Zechariah. Just one quick verse out of that, talking about where it's written that the Messiah was coming into Jerusalem, so we can get these people, and if we could just get one person to come out those camps, all praises to the Most High, because it's just leading our people astray. So Esther chapter 3 verse 1, and it reads, after these things did King Ahasuerus promote Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, and advanced him, and set his seat above all the princes that were with him. And all the king's servants that were in the king's gate bowed and reverenced Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him, but Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence. Alright, so how can we put that nowadays? So we can have a president, and the president got himself a vice president. He's more advanced and more higher than all the senators, congressmen, governors. He's higher than all of them. He got a better station, more known to his heathen brothers and sisters. But there's some Negro, as it says in Acts 13, chapter 1, some Niger, calling himself a Hebrew Israelite, got the nerve to look at the vice president and like, man, I put my hand in my pockets and turn my back. You ain't nobody to me. You ain't nobody special. So what? I'm in the land of my captivity. I still serve the Most High. Can care less about your unrighteous judgments and your unrighteous behavior. You ain't nobody special, and wouldn't show him no reverence. So that's the situation we're looking at. Let's pick it up at verse 3. Exodus chapter 3, verse 3. Then the king's servants, which were in the king's gate, said unto Mordecai, why transgress thou the king's commandment? Now it came to pass, when they spake daily unto him, and he hearkened not unto them, that they told Haman to see whether Mordecai's matter would stand, for he had told them that he was a Jew. And when Haman saw that Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence, then was Haman full of wrath, and he thought scorn to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had showed him the people of Mordecai. Wherefore Haman sought to destroy all the Jews that were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, even the people of Mordecai. So they said, man, it's still no good dirty Negroes. It's those no good dirty Hebrew Israelites. It's those people. That's all Mordecai's people. And he said, let me make up some laws that could get those people. Maybe we'll call it Rex 84. Maybe we'll call it the King Alfred's plan. Maybe we'll call it putting the tanks in Chicago. No matter what name they put on to kill the children of Israel, to get the Hebrew Israelites, you shouldn't be afraid. You shouldn't go run off scared. Because if the Most High is protecting you, and if he's for you, who can be against you? What weapon have they formed on this planet will prosper against you if the Most High, who can resurrect you to eternal life, has got your back? That's the problem. Again, that's why I say you must know what lamb you have chosen in this first month. Because again, if you with Dickie Shepherd, GOCC, he's told you to flee, to be afraid. He's saying there's weapons that formed against you can kill you, even if the Most High is with you. He taught you a doctrine of fear, that you better bow down to the vice president or the president or some king. You better get to stepping or to running, because the Most High can't protect you. He tells you in his word, when he's prophesying, that we will be able to walk over stubble at that appointed time. The ashes of the dead. So again, if you look at Dickie Shepherd and GOCC's teaching, you need to flee that doctrine. Because the lamb that is going to protect you, they're teaching you. One, he don't sit on the right-hand side of the Father, and he can't protect you. His word will come back void. But our forefather Mordecai, he didn't have that problem. He didn't have that spirit of fear on him. So we're going to read the last verse here, chapter 3, verse 7, and it reads, in the first month, that is the month of Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast pure, that is, the lot, before Haman, from day to day, and from month to month, to the 12th month, that is the month of Adar. So we see in the land of their captivity, they call that month Nisan. Even though he wouldn't show no reverence to Haman, even he was in the land of his captivity, he wasn't running around fearing that they all were going to die. Even though they made an edict like Rex 84, the King Alfred plan, or whatever these heathens got their mind set on doing to the Hebrew Israelites, Mordecai wasn't afraid. So again, we see here the month of Nisan, why it was called Nisan versus Aviv. He was in the land of their captivity. Quick verse out of Nehemiah. Nehemiah chapter 2, reading just verse 1. And it came to pass in the month of Nisan, in the 12th year of Artaxerxes, the king, the wine was before him. And I took up the wine and gave it unto the king. And I had been before time sat in his presence. So Nehemiah was in the land of his captivity. And again, they called it Nisan. So, again, part of this teaching you should have is the start of your new year to Yah, not to yourself, not to some Hebrew Israelite, not to some camp, but to Yah, that your month is either called Aviv, it's called Nisan, you could call it March, you're in March, or you can plainly call it number 1. But the focus of this is the Most High being in you. Again, the Passover, days of unleavened bread. We see that they had to take him off that tree where they killed him at because the high Sabbath was approaching. And again, the midst of the week was that Wednesday. The next day was what we call the Thursday in the Gregorian calendar, and he had to come off because it was a high Sabbath. We see that teaching in Exodus 23 as well as Deuteronomy 16. All right? And keeping it here where you're scattered at, no matter what country, because it says all countries where you're scattered, no matter what country you're scattered at, you should be keeping these feast days as the Most High has chosen. Let's look at Zechariah real quick. I think it's Zechariah 9:9 or Zechariah 8:9. Let's get this prophecy. this prophecy told. So let's go to Zechariah. Let's go to Zechariah 9:9 first. I could be wrong. Alright, Zechariah chapter 9, verse 9. Let's read verse 8. Zechariah 9, verse 8, and it reads, "And I will encamp about my house, because the army, because of him that passes by, and because of him that returneth. And no oppressor shall pass through them any more. For now I have seen with my eyes. Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, thy king cometh unto thee. He is just and having salvation, lowly, and riding upon an ass, and upon a colt, the foal of an ass." So here we read this because that was prophecy about how he was going to enter in. And again, this is from one of the prophets. Matthew 5:17, "Think not that I came to destroy the law of the prophets, but to fulfill." Again, if you understand what Messiah you're serving, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God you're serving is not coming to destroy the prophets. It said that he was prophesied that he would come from a virgin. It said that he was prophesied that he would ride on the ass. It tells you in both places that he fulfilled those things. But yet we got too many people that are in the house of Israel that teach those things are false. Alright, so this lasted maybe a wee bit longer than I thought. It's about an hour. And again, it's just getting our mind prepared for that Sabbath day. So I implore you, if you're in one of these false camps, those that don't do nothing but wicked teaching and goes against the words of the Most High, they're one of the Pharisees or Sadducees, go ahead and leave them. It's better for you to take the Passover and eat it by yourself and be blameless than share that Passover with those of condemnation and those that the Most High haven't chosen. So I hope these things help you in your walk. These are things that you can teach to your loved ones. And all praises to the Most High, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Yahshua, our King and High Priest of the nation of Israel. Shalom.
salvation, trying to find some peace. Now I'm truly blessed and I'm highly favored. Yah revealed himself to